What do you know about folktales? They're stories, yes, but what's special about them is how they're told, passed down from person to person by word of mouth. They've traveled through generations to teach children moral lessons and preserve the unspoken rule of society. As time goes by, technology and media evolve, and folktales evolve too. In Indonesia, we've seen major entertainment companies adapting these stories into films, TV dramas, and even animations. But here's something interesting. Almost all of these adaptations follow a linear narrative. They have beginning, middle, and an end. In 2023, Putra, Nurkusuma, Kawarga, Meiliana, and Fajar identified a growing concern. They pointed out that people born between 1995 and 2012, the Generation Z, are highly tech literate. They're worried that as Gen Z becomes more exposed to global media, local cultural stories could fade away. They emphasize that without creative modern efforts to reintroduce Indonesian folklore in engaging ways, future generations could lose touch with the moral values and cultural identity inside these traditional tales. That's why some game designers are stepping in, asking how folktale can be adapted meaningfully to preserve culture. You can already see this happening with games like She and the Light Bearer, which tells a poetic story through narrative gameplay, and Pamali, which explores social taboos through horror game. But adapting a folktale into interactive media is tricky. It requires a deep respect for the original story and careful thought about the player's agency. Angela Key suggested that adapting folktales into games is similar to adapting them into books or films because of the author-driven nature of video game stories. But Kunitz has a different idea. He argues that this view misses the key element of game, interactivity. Games don't just tell stories, they generate them through players' choices. And if we think beyond the narrative structure, folktales aren't actually linear in a cultural sense. They evolve through retellings and reinterpretations, more like a branching network than a straight line. Each storyteller tweaks the story a bit, the events, the character, the moral, shaping it to fit their community. So, while each version is linear, the tradition as a whole is dynamic, almost like a web of interconnected stories rather than one fixed text. To explore that idea, a visual novel called Fragrant Water was developed. Its goal to ask how interactive storytelling can use the unique affordances of games to translate an authentic retelling of a Javanese folktale. Through this project, 3 key design insights were found, interactive elements that helps enhance a folktale adaptation in game. Key number 1, narrative pattern analysis. To adapt a folktale into interactive media, we first need a deep understanding of its narrative. That means analyzing similar stories to discover their pattern. In Fragrant Water, the focus is on a folktale from East Java called Asal Usul Banyuwangi. According to Ratri, Asal Usul Banyuwangi is a legend, a story explaining the origin of a place. By comparing it to other legends, we can see recurring themes, actions that lead to consequences, supernatural transformation, and nature's role in shaping fate. These stories often warns against disobedience, arrogance, and broken promises, while rewarding kindness, intelligence, and courage. Key number 2, player agency for cultural authenticity. Next, come player agency. Using that narrative analysis, the designer built branching storylines, letting player make choices that affect how folktale unfold. This approach follows Harmut Kinet's framework of interactive digital narrative, a way for players to participate in the storytelling. Using prototyping tools like Twine, Fragrant Water was tested and refined many times to see how player choices affect consequences. Giving players a sense of autonomy also helped them to better understand the story before making key decisions, preparing them for bigger outcomes. To create this illusion of control, designers need to think about what the player wants when faced with a crossroad. Key number 3, player engagement beyond narrative regression. Let's face it, visual novel can be a bit boring sometimes. So, we as a designer need to think of a way to make the storyline engaging enough but not taking away from the main plotline. Well, fortunately, Indonesian folktales are often deeply tied to nature and settings. That gives designers another way to build engagement beyond just story progression. By using point-and-click mechanics, players can explore environments, discover details, and interact with the world as they uncover the narrative. This aligns with Fanny's idea who expand on the affordances of point-and-click genre for preserving spaces in digital format. As Frenisevic pointed out, small interactions like navigating, choosing dialogue, triggering events all support narrative immersion. But balance is key. Lindley reminds us that gameplay and story need to work together. Animation and cutscene can act as a narrative rewards, pacing devices that keep the story flowing. I heard that the game Fragrant Water not only retells a folktale, but also opens a pathway for cultural storytelling through game design, and that's exactly what it aims to do. Through its adaptation of Asal Usul Banyuwangi, Fragrant Water shows how folktales can be translated into interactive media, creating a new framework for cultural storytelling through game. It highlights how game designers can preserve cultural authenticity, give players meaningful agency, and balance gameplay with narrative. Ultimately, it suggests that games aren't just tools for entertainment, they can be living vessels of tradition, a vital medium for preserving and evolving traditional storytelling in contemporary contexts, contributing to the growing field of folktale game adaptation in Southeast Asia. It is a way to preserve, evolve, and reimagine our oldest stories in the digital age. And that makes folktales and games part of the same human history we've been telling all along.